Power Automate is all about streamlining your business processes, whether those involve cloud-based services that may not require human intervention or those that employees perform daily from their own computers. Once you log into the Power Automate dashboard, which you see here, you can go to My Flows to view your cloud and your desktop flows, as well as those that have been shared with you by others. You can start new flows from here. You can also, for desktop flows, we'll take a brief look at this. You can use Power Automate Desktop. This app handles automating repetitive tasks in Windows apps or your browser, often referred to as RPA or robotic process automation. These desktop flows can be recorded directly as you perform them or entered and edited manually in the desktop app. You can see that application here. This is one of the samples that involves sharing a PowerPoint file as a PDF. So this shows all of the steps that are involved in opening that PowerPoint file, exporting it to a PDF, and then sending an email to notify somebody. You can edit all of the specifics around any of these steps. You can reorder your steps. You can add new ones. You can start recording in the middle. You can delete them. You can add new actions over here on the left side. You can see just about anything you can do on your computer, file-based actions, adding, deleting, renaming files, browser-based actions, creating a new tab, clicking on a link. All of these kinds of things can be utilized inside of your flows. In the settings for the application, you can also install a special service that will even allow unattended execution if you want to have your machine running but locked and you want to have flows be able to be executed from the cloud portal across multiple machines. You can do that as well. There's a lot of uses for this. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper look instead at the cloud-based flows. Cloud flows all have some kind of trigger followed by a flow of actions, and your trigger can be one of a few different types. An instant flow can be executed manually with the push of a button. A scheduled flow can be a one-time or a recurring flow based on time, and other flows may be triggered by events like an incoming web or API request from another service, or when a file is created in SharePoint, for example. You can start a blank flow with any of these, or you can use one of hundreds of templates that are out there. These are easy to kind of look through if you want to get an email whenever there's a new tweet about a certain keyword. There's a flow for that. You can kind of sort these by remote work or data collection or email. You can search for different services to see some examples of how they might be implemented. Just as many as there are, connectors that we've seen previously, there are a huge number of possibilities here. One of the new ways of being able to create a flow is from an AI prompt. So if we say that we want a Word document, when a Word document is created in a SharePoint location, to copy it to another folder in SharePoint, change the file name to add the date to it, and then send an email. If we say to generate based on that, it's going to give us a suggested flow, which generally makes sense. You can ask for a different suggestion if you don't like what it's providing. Then it's going to let you review the different apps and services that are involved. It may require you to log into those if you haven't already. And then you go ahead and say to create it, and it gives you a blank canvas here with a new flow on it and allows you to go from there. In most cases, this is going to do a fairly good job of getting you to a starting point. And you can see that it has done largely what we asked. It has a trigger that has to do with when a file is created, and then it's going to copy that file and send an email. I'm going to kind of do the cooking show trick and switch over to a version that I've kind of already edited that has a few more things in place, but that is a really good way to kind of get started. You want to start with a fairly simple prompt, or get as detailed as possible about all the specifics that you want to have included, and it does a pretty good job. This is the trigger, and you can see when I select the trigger or any action that this Explorer comes up on the left side. It gives you all the details that you need to fill in. The required fields are highlighted. In this case, we need to provide a site address and a library name. This is the folder where we're going to be looking for files. And then we have to say, how often are we going to check for those? And in this case, it's every minute we're going to be looking for new files that get created. And then later on, you can see that we have this condition here. If you wanted to create a new action, you can click anywhere in between or at the end and select to add an action. And you can see that there are these control actions. A condition like we have here allows you to check for a series of and or expressions. You can apply to each. Sometimes you're going to get a flow that has a collection of things like files in a folder, and you want to do something to each of those. You can do a do until, so you can repeat an action until a condition changes. There are a whole bunch of these. There are also, if we look at just the built-in actions, things that are related to date time, data operations. We can create files. We can save variables and things to use later on. There are scheduling things. So there's a whole bunch that are built in. And when we switch to all, you can see, again, a huge number of different services and things that we can connect to perform actions. But if we take a brief look inside here, this condition, we're looking for a file name that contains .docx. So if that is true, then we're dealing with a Word document, so it's going to follow this path. If that condition is false, then we follow this path. And we've added in a little terminate action here that's going to end the flow with canceled. It's not going to fail, it's just going to show up as canceled. So if we drop an image into this SharePoint folder, it'll go here and say it was canceled. But if we do have a Word document, then there's an action that's going to get the file content. So we have an identifier that's provided here when the file is created, and we're going to get the content. Then we're going to have an action that creates the file. It's going to create the file with a file name that we get with a function. It may look a little bit complex when it comes to the low code part of the solution, and this is where the low code comes in. There are expressions that you can provide for working with strings of text, working with dates, performing logical expressions and other types of things. And it does a good job of being able to lay those out and let you know the information you need to provide. So if you want to dive into these, you may have done some of these kinds of things in Excel or other places. But what we're doing here is we're taking the original file name, we're inserting a date, and then we're putting the extension that was there before on it. That's all that this does. But you can see that we have this, which allows us to edit expressions like we have here. And then the other important thing to point out is that when we click that little lightning bolt, you can see that there are outputs from any of the previous steps that we've encountered in the flow. Any of those outputs from a previous step is available to us. So in this case, we're going to take the file content that was retrieved from the previous get file content action. And then in the email here, we have a bunch of static text, but we also can insert the file name that was created. The creator, we can get the author of that document as well. And then there's a function in here that allows us to just insert the date and time. So any of the things, like I said, that are exposed through a previous action are available to us in here. And again, it does a really good job of making it easy. If you want to perform calculations with these things or insert them into emails, you can do anything you like with data from a previous step. So once we're done, we'll go ahead and save this flow. There's a flow checker, and if there was anything like a field that was required that you didn't provide information for, or a calculation that doesn't work properly, it'll prompt you for those. You can go ahead and test it. In our case, we have a time-based flow. So as soon as we save this time-based flow, when we go back, we'll see that we can take a look at the available runs. And this has been saved before and it has run before. But since we're checking every minute, if I want to go in and drop a couple of files into this input folder, which is what I've done, I've got an image file and I've got a document file. Every minute it's checking for that. And you can see that in this case, the flow ran, and in the output folder, it creates a version of this document file. It ignores the image, but the document file gets moved over and it gets appended with the date. And I get an email. So the email dynamically is sent. It includes the file information, the creator, and the date for that. So the flow worked. And if we want to go back and look at that just real quick, we can see, and by clicking on any of the flows, that all of the steps here, we can drill down into it, all of the steps completed successfully. And in all of the places where there was data involved, we can see all of that data. And that comes in especially handy in cases where there were failures. If we want to drill into one of the flows that happened earlier on, I could see in the run details that there was a problem with an expression in here, and you can see exactly where that action failed inside of here. So this is super handy to go back in. You can make some tweaks and you can resubmit, or you can go in and re-edit your flow and run it again. So Power Automate allows you to streamline all of your business workflows, whether they're cloud-based or desktop-based. And you can get started with very little technical knowledge. You can trigger your automations from a Power App or a Power BI report, which we may dive into in a future session. And as with all the Power Platform offerings, there are plenty of learning resources and samples to explore. You can probably already think of a few areas that could be optimized within your organization by a Power Automate flow. And we'd be happy to talk about designing or implementing the more complex ones that may take you beyond your comfort zone.